differential attention to children is not merely a function of the fact that mothers are more frequently in the home. In Israel, where children are cared for during the day in nurseries while both parents work, mothers are still far more frequently involved in childcare duties and spontaneous interaction with the child at the end of the day than fathers. Sagi, Lam, Shoham, Der, and Lukovich, 1985. Lam, Frodi, Hwang, Frodi, and Steinberg, 1982, took advantage of innovative Swedish legislation that allowed either parent to take 9 months of paid leave after their child's birth in order to examine child rearing under the most liberal of gender role conditions. The leave could be divided between 72. Mothers matter most, women and parental investment. The parents as they wished. The take-up of this opportunity was revealing. Between the introduction of the legislation in 1974 and data collection in 1979, less than 15% of fathers took leave and the majority of those that did took 1 month or less. Most fathers took this leave at the same time as their wife, and the extent of their actual contribution to child care is hard to ascertain. The researchers originally identified 52 couples, half of whom planned to take paternal leave for 1 month, the non-traditionals, and half of whom had no plans for paternal leave. At recontact 1 year after the birth, only 17 of the original 26, non-traditional, fathers had actually taken the month of leave. The researchers reclassified the families on this basis and analyzed observational data that they collected in the home. In both traditional and non-traditional families, mothers more often than fathers displayed affectionate behavior, vocalized, smiled, tended, held, disciplined, and soothed the infant. Of all the factors that have contributed to the central importance of the mother over evolutionary time, perhaps the most critical is male reproductive strategy. Men's quest for novelty and variety in their sexual life increases their chances of both death and desertion, leaving the mother firmly holding the baby. In animal species, polygyny is associated with earlier death among males. In part, this results from the dangers of male-male competition and from the generalized risky behavior of young men. In England and Wales, the male-to-female ratio for deaths from external causes is at its most extreme at ages 15 to 24 years, when it reaches nearly 4 to 1, Office of Population Censuses and Surveys, 1995. However, even males who survive past their peak reproductive years still die earlier than do females, and it is the mother who must shoulder the full burden of infant care. About 7% of children living in single-parent homes in the United States do so as a result of the death of one parent, Weinraub and Gringlers, 1995. But men's polygynous inclinations more often increase the likelihood of desertion than death. Even in officially monogamous societies, men seek more pre- and extramarital affairs than women, Daly and Wilson, 1988, Fisher, 1993. Men's preference for youth and physical beauty in sexual partners means that as their wives age, younger women become increasingly attractive and divorce more likely. After divorce, men are more likely than women to select younger partners, to remarry, and to produce further children in their second marriages. Buckle, Gallup, and Rod, 1996, Johanna, Forsberg, and Tolberg, 1995. Jokler, Rotkirch, Rickard, Pette, and Lumar, 2010, Carr, Jokler, Merriler, Heller, and Cajola, 1998. When divorce happens, the burden of parental care is almost always taken up by the mother. In no country do mothers abandon the children at the rate which fathers do. Geary, 2000. In the United States, custody is awarded to the mother in over 85% of cases. Furstenberg, Morgan, and Pursuing Half the Point. 73. Allison, 1987. When fathers remain the principal caretaker, it is usually the result of the mother's incompetence or desertion. It is rare for fathers to contest the custody of the child. Grief, 1985. After divorce, only 1 in 6 fathers maintains regular contact with his child, and about half of absent fathers fail to pay monetary support for their upkeep. Men do not always wait until after marriage to desert. In 2008, 41% of births in the United States and 44% in the United Kingdom were to unmarried women. Center for Disease Control and Prevention, (N.D.). About 1/3 of these births were to lone women, while the remainder were to cohabiting couples. It is estimated that 43% of cohabiting parents, compared to 8% of married parents, will separate before their child's 5 featuring H birthday, Kiernan, 1999. Sometimes men choose to desert and sometimes they are pushed because they can make no meaningful financial or emotional contribution to the household. Either way, the fact remains that unmarried fathers who seek custody of their children are rare in comparison to the number of men being pursued by government agencies to provide financial support for their abandoned children. 26% of children in the United States live in a single-parent home. Nationally, about 12% of American households are female-headed, a figure that pales into insignificance compared to figures from Belarus, 54%, Eritrea, 48%, and Haiti, 44%. Rates of female-headed households are a proxy for a nation's poverty, but, at an individual level, they are a testament to a mother's commitments to her children through the worst of times. For all these reasons, nature has crafted a special emotional attachment between mother and child that functions to increase the chance of an infant achieving independence, adulthood, and reproduction. Fathers contribute in their own way to a child's safety and provisioning, although, because good fathers tend to marry good mothers, some of the apparent advantages accrued by their children may have as much to do with his wise choice of mate than with his direct contribution to parenting. Amato, 1998, Geary, 2000. Mothers know that a good partner is worth having. But through our evolutionary past from an infant's viewpoint, mothers have always been essential while fathers have been an optional extra. Pursuing half the point. Sexual selection is at the very core of Darwinian theory. The difference between men and women in their parental investment was the key that opened the research doors to the study of human reproductive psychology, and academics poured through them. The reproductive task can be broken into 2 stages and 2 kinds of problems, finding the right mate and raising offspring to maturity. Males direct a greater part of their energy to the former, females to the latter. 74. Mothers matter most, women and parental investment. The study of mating drew far more research attention than the study of parenting. It is tempting to think that this was the result of the predominance of male researchers whose interest was understandably in their own sex. But it was also something to do with the way that sexual selection was defined, predominantly by male researchers. Campbell, 2009. The focused on competition for mating opportunities using a definition that Darwin employed in his earlier work, the struggle between males for possession of the females. Is a more restricted definition than Darwin used later with its focus on differential reproduction, the advantage which certain individuals have over others of the same sex and species, solely in respect of reproduction. Reproduction is a much bigger concept than copulation, it includes birth and parenting and so accords a much more critical role to women. As, Howardy 1999, page 81, original emphasis in italics, puts it so aptly, unless mating results in the production of offspring who themselves survive infancy and the juvenile years and position themselves so as to reproduce, sex is only so much sound and undulation signifying nothing. Raising offspring is as critical to reproductive success, if not more so, as sexual athleticism. Yet women's capacity to perform this feat, lasting over years, costing them dearly, constraining their own life choices, shaping the next generation, was taken as unremarkable. While studies of mate preferences loomed large in evolutionary psychology research, decisions about birth spacing, breastfeeding, weaning, and all parenting took a back seat. Until the arrival of Sarah Howardy's exceptional book Mother Nature, mothering was taken for granted as a straightforward and unproblematic exercise. Howardy, 1999, page 69, was forced to underline again and again the critical importance of the mother. For species such as primates, the mother is the environment, or at least the most important feature in it during the most perilous phase of any individual's existence. Her luck plus how well she copes with her world, its scarcities, its predators, its pathogens, along with her conspecifices in it, are what determine whether or not a fertilization ever counts. I think that an important reason for this neglect derived from the way parental investment was portrayed. Females, with their heavy parental investment, were the prizes for which swaggering males competed. The image is irresistible. A female sits on the sidelines, passively awaiting the arrival of a male who, by demonstrating his dominance over his rivals, has won the undisputed right to her reproductive favors. It was male competition, risky, desperate, and tinged with sexual anticipation, that became the attention grabber. The long hard road that lay ahead for the female, mundane, time-consuming, repetitive, seemed so much less exciting. And the focus on male winners and losers informed a belief that women, and the mothering that they did, was all much of a muchness. There was little to choose between women either in the pursuing half the .75 strategies they used, or the quality and quantity of children that resulted. The number of offspring that a male could sire ranged from a stunning zenith in the hundreds to a catastrophic zero. Males were brilliant success stories or dismal failures, while women took a moderate middle road, steadily producing as many offspring as their circumstances would allow. A female's life was portrayed as a predictable cycle: enter estrus, copulate, get pregnant, lactate, and begin again. If this were true, there would be no variability in female reproductive success and so little of interest to discover about differences between females in their choices and strategies. And if there were no differences between women in their reproductive output, there could be no selection and no adaptation. The driving force of evolution would be men's success or failure. Women were relegated to the role of convenient sperm receptacles and breeding machines. Females' contribution to evolution in this scenario could only be as choosers of male gene quality. But we now know there is considerable variability between females in their ability not just to produce children but to raise them. The variance may not be as great as between males, but that is irrelevant because females are not in competition with males, they are in competition with other females. If you die leaving 6 grown children behind and I leave 1, you leave 6 times as many of your genes in the next generation as I do. Women were choosy investors all right, but to opt out of the competition altogether was no more an adaptive option for a female than it was for a male. The difference was that females were forced to carry out the competition in a much less overt way, for reasons I will discuss later. So it was the dramatic life or death quality of male competition that grabbed researchers' attention. Risk-taking and bravado were the routes to the winner's podium where males strove to secure the glittering prize of reproductive success. But, paradoxically, the preoccupation with male competition obscures a critical fact: males compete so ferociously because their lives are less important than females in the reproductive process. Males may seem to be the stars of the show, but we should bear in mind that they are essentially freeloading on females' efforts. Consider this: if we knew our planet was about to be struck by a meteor and only 100 people could be saved in an underground bunker, what proportion of men and women would you put down there? My suggestion would be about 10 men and 90 women. 10 should be able to do an adequate job of impregnating all the women, and the fewer the men, the fewer the calories they would consume and the lower the competition between them would be. But imagine if we had made the opposite choice, 90 men and 10 women. What kind of hope would we have for the future of the human race? The fact is that the majority of men are, biologically speaking, dispensable, but when the number 76 mothers matter most, women and parental investment of women drops, our future looks bleak. In the real world, the sex ratio remains roughly equal, and as long ago as 1930, Fisher explained why. When there are too few males, the lower intensity of same-sex competition means that any boy that gets born does very well indeed, reproductively speaking. Genes that bias towards son production rather than daughter production will start to spread. But as the sex ratio reaches equality, the reproductive advantages of producing sons begin to diminish. The same logic holds when there are too few females. Eventually the sex ratio stabilizes at a near equal number of sons and daughters. But in some species extraordinary sex ratios can occur, and when they do, it comes as no surprise that they are female-heavy. In some insects, there are 20 females born for every 1 male, Hamilton, 1964. In Chapter 3 I will try to convince you that men's greater willingness to take life-threatening risks is a testament not just to the reproductive gulf between male winners and losers but to men's smaller contribution to parental investment. Men hold their lives less tightly in their hands because they have been more marginal than women in ensuring the successful survival of their offspring. Chapter 3. High stakes and low risks, women and aggression. Th. Proposition that men are more aggressive than women is hardly a contentious one. A glance at criminal statistics from any nation in the World Conference rooms that men are more likely to engage in criminal violence. 90% of criminal violence on our planet is committed by men. Kruchnet, 1994. Simon and Baxter, 1989. But this is the visible and extreme end of aggression. Do these sex differences trickle down to more mundane aggressive episodes? Many hundreds of psychological studies have examined sex differences in aggression using a range of techniques including laboratory experiments, observation, personality assessment, and self- and peer-reported behavior. The results have been summarized using a technique called meta-analysis that determines just how big the sex differences are when they are weighted and averaged across many studies. The results fight a clear pattern. The more dangerous and risky the form of aggression studied, the larger the sex difference. Archer. 2009, Campbell, 2006. For physical acts such as hitting, punching, and kicking, the effect size is large. Up to 82% of men are more aggressive than the average woman. For verbal acts such as abuse and threats, the effect size is somewhat more moderate. 70% of men are more verbally aggressive than the average woman. Archer, 2004, Eagerly and Stephen, 1986, Knight, Fabes, and Higgins, 1996, Knight, Guthrie, Page and Fabes, 2002. Acts of indirect aggression include spreading nasty rumors, excluding people, and stigmatizing them. Because the aggressor can remain anonymous and the possibility of retaliation is consequently reduced, these acts are much less dangerous, and here the sex difference virtually disappears. Archer, 2004. The traditional question has been, why are men so willing to risk their lives in violent confrontations? The convincing account was provided by Daly and Wilson, 1983, and rests on men's polygynous mating strategy. Desire to mate with multiple females causes intense male competition. Operational sex ratio, the number of reproductively available members of each sex, is always skewed toward too many men because when women are pregnant or lactating they are effectively removed from the pool of prospective mates. If 10% of men, 78. High stakes and low risks, women and aggression, have a monopoly on 50% of the available female population, other men are faced with the possibility of going to the graves childless unless they fight for their share of reproductive opportunity. So men have been pitted against one another to win a larger share of the next generation's gene pool than their rivals, and the route to that prize was to compete for as many mating opportunities as possible. The disparity between male winners and losers is great. Men who win, win very big. Those who lose, leave no descendants whatsoever. To put it more technically, the variance in reproductive success among men is greater than that among women. Emperor Mole Ishmael's 888 children outstrip the women champions' total of 69 by a considerable margin. Even today, under official monogamy, the disparity between the sexes in reproductive success continues. The variance in the number of children produced is 10% higher in men than women because, after a divorce, they more often marry younger spouses, a strategy of serial polygyny. Men with 3 wives during their lifetime have 19% more children than those who stayed with one, but additional husbands make no difference to women's output of children. Jokler, Rotkirch, Rickard, Pette, and Lumar, 2010. Bigger prizes warrant greater risks. Males engage in risky physical aggression because the possible reproductive returns offset the risks. Remember that we are not speaking of men consciously and deliberately vying with each other to inseminate women. Male sexual competitiveness was forged long before the advent of our species because aggressive males left behind a bigger share of their genes than their more restrained peers. In primate species, including our own, male competitiveness does not always appear to be about females, although a remarkable number of assaults between men are directly connected with romantic triangles, but they are about achieving dominance over other males, which is associated with greater reproductive success. In these days of contraception, some people find this whole notion preposterous. Victors of Saturday night brawls, even when those fights are about women, rarely have impregnation in mind. Contraception has effectively severed the link between sex and reproduction. The fact that we have welcomed contraception so warmly is evidence that human reproductive success was a product of our enthusiasm for making love, not for making babies. As long as sex naturally led to pregnancy, selection only needed to ensure a keen interest in sex. Effective and easily available contraception has been with us for barely a century, and this is insufficient time to upset several 100,000 years of evolutionary pressure. The fact that men desire women, and lots of them, and are willing to fight for them is part of male evolved psychology. The aggression equation 79. With mating opportunities center stage, it seemed that women had little reason to compete. If they wanted sex, men would be only too happy to accommodate them. As Simons, 1979, rather tersely put it, I trust no one believes that women compete for opportunities to copulate. Because of men's sexual eagerness, women were assumed to breed at their maximum rate, Daly and Wilson. 1983. If so, there should be virtually no variance in female reproductive success. But we now know that this is incorrect, Stockley and Bro-Jorgensen, 2011. Females vary in their ultimate reproductive success because some are better than others at the twin challenges of motherhood, feeding their children and protecting them from danger. You and I are here today because we came from a long line of successful mothers. And, when resources are scarce, motherhood means competition. But the intensity of that competition is constrained because, as we saw in Chapter 2, mothers are so vital to the survival of their progeny. Raising offspring to maturity means avoiding injury and death. So female competition does not look the same as men's, a fact presciently noted by primatologist Sarah Awardy over 30 years ago. Women are no less competitive than other primates, and the evidence will be forthcoming when we begin to devise methodologies sufficiently ingenious to measure it. Efforts to date have sought to find lines of authority and hierarchies comparable to those males form in corporations. No scientist has yet trained a systematic eye on women competing with one another in the spheres that really matter to them. The difficulty is not simply narrowness of vision and the mistaken assumption that female competition will take the same form as competition between males, but also the subtlety of interactions between females. How do you attach a number to calumny? How do you measure the sweetly worded put-down? Awardy, 1981, pp. 129 to 130. In this chapter, I will turn the traditional evolutionary question on its head. My question is not why men compete so ferociously, but why women don't. Women do not lack the motivation to compete, they need resources as much as men and more so when they have dependent offspring. But the extreme dependence of infants on their mothers meant that ancestral women who avoided exposing themselves to injury or death raised more surviving offspring. The evolutionary message to women was clear: at all costs, stay alive. The aggression equation. Darwin, as did Malthus before him, observed that in nature there are rarely enough resources to go round. Food, mates, shelter, and safety are needed by every organism, and when they are in short supply, competition ensues. Is, of course, the basic tenet of natural selection. Competition can take two. High stakes and low risks, women and aggression. Forms depending on where and how the resources are distributed in time and space. Resources that are spread out over a spatial area give rise to scramble competition because they cannot be defended by a single individual. For example, if a group of individuals fish in a single lake, then a declining stock affects everyone and each person can only scramble to get what they can. In other cases, there is contest competition when the resource can be held and defended by a single individual or group. The winner drives off the competitors and takes the prize for themselves. Aggression is a form of intense contest competition. It is about gaining and defending a resource. Psychologists often distinguish between proactive and reactive aggression. Proactive aggression, sometimes known as instrumental aggression, is a means to securing some extraneous goal or resource. Reactive aggression, sometimes known as hostile, angry, or defensive aggression, is responsive to the takeover bids of others. From an evolutionary perspective, these are two sides of the same coin. If you have a resource that I want, then I will use proactive aggression to take it from you. You, most probably, will respond to this by using reactive aggression to hang on to it. In either case, it is about who controls the valued resource. Aggression is a tactic best used sparingly. It is risky and potentially fatal. In the animal kingdom, deaths from contest competition are rare although not unknown. This is because, although both parties have something to gain, a resource, they also have something to lose, their life. For this reason, in many species contests have a ritualized form that reduces injury. Unlike predatory aggression which is designed to kill a prey with maximum efficiency, intraspecific contests often involve a warning period in which contestants size each other up, allowing time for one to back off if their odds look poor. Even in a full-blown fight, attacks are often directed to robust parts of the anatomy such as the fluid anx. The aim is to establish dominance and cause the opponent to withdraw, rather than to kill them. But the dangers of sustaining injury and occasionally death are real. What kind of mental mechanism has evolution crafted to govern the decision as to when a fight is worth it? And how does this explain sex differences in aggression? The rewards and costs of aggression, and other forms of risky behavior, differ for males and females. In net terms, aggression is more beneficial for males than females because male reproductive success can be increased by dominating same-sex rivals and gaining additional copulations. Women, with their higher burden of infant dependence, can increase their reproductive success by staying alive and protecting the young. But reproductive success is the distal cause of aggression, responding at a macro level over hundreds of generations of selection pressures. Psychologists are interested in the ways that the aggression equation 81. Long-haul sexual selection pressures are realized in the brain, the proximal causes of aggression. Feelings run high in aggressive encounters, and this suggests that its evolutionary roots are likely to be buried deep in lower-level brain structures governing emotion. We share these ancient neural structures with other species. In humans, they form the evolutionary bedrock with which our higher cortical processes interact in guiding our behavior. Yet for many years, economists and psychologists who studied risky decision-making, including aggression, did so in terms of expected utility theory, stressing its cold cognitive basis. Human rationality, they assumed, made us different from other species. Our decisions resulted from an expectation-based calculus, which researchers modeled in algebraic terms. Prospective rewards and costs were anticipated and suitably weighted by their probability to arrive at an objective judgment. Homo economicus, a Spock-like function, dominated research, obscuring until recently the role of emotion in decision-making. See Lowenstein, Weber, Halsey, and Welch, 2001. Rewards and costs are not conscious entries into a cognitive balance sheet, they are instantiated at a deep emotional level that we share with other species. Emotions, evolved over hundreds of thousands of years, act as whisperings within that guide our action. Barish, 1981. Emotions are designed to help people make approach avoidance distinctions, and these lie at the heart of aggressive behavior. What emotions might feed into this evolved decision-making calculator? On the one hand, anger acts as an impelling motivation, spurring us forward with righteous indignation. How dare she? Who does she think she is? The emotion of anger is the accelerator pedal for aggression. On the other hand, fear holds us back. She looks mean. She's massive. The emotion of fear acts as a braking mechanism. So the probability of aggression depends on the relative strength of anger and fear. Aggression equals anger-fear. In situations of threat, anger and fear can and do co-occur. In some situations, the scales are tipped strongly in favor of anger so that fear barely registers as an emotion. In other situations, despite our fury, fear overpowers us and we retreat. Men and women are capable of experiencing both emotions, but the relative balance between them is tipped more strongly in favor of overt aggression in men. Is this because men experience greater anger? The sex difference might be mediated by men's stronger anger, part of an approach system resulting from their sex's intense competition for mating opportunities which selected those most willing to enter the aggression arena. Or is it because women experience greater fear, an avoidance motivation resulting from greater offspring dependence and the crucial importance of maternal survival? A difference in the threshold for experiencing one or both of these emotions might explain the sex difference in aggression. 82. High stakes and low risks, women and aggression.